Welcome to tonight's bedtime story. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the gentle rain guide you to sleep. Tonight, we journey into the magical world and let the story begin. Dr. Knowlla was once upon a time a poor peasant called Crab, who drove with 2 oxen a load of wood to the town and sold it to a doctor for 2 tailors when the money was being counted out to him. It so happened that the doctor was sitting at table, and when the peasant saw how well he ate and drank, his heart desired what he saw, and would willingly have been a doctor too. So he remained standing a while, and at length inquired if he too could not be a doctor. "Oh, yes," said the doctor, "that is soon managed." "What must I do?" asked the peasant. "In the first place, buy yourself an ABC book of the kind which has a cock on. In the second, turn your cart and your 2 oxen into money, and get yourself some clothes and whatsoever else pertains to medicine. Thirdly, have a sign painted for yourself with the words, 'I am Dr. Noel,' and have that nailed up above your house door." The peasant did everything that he had been told to do. When he had doctored people a while, but not long, a rich and great lord had some money stolen. Then he was told about Dr. Noel, who lived in such and such a village, and must know what had become of the money. So the lord had the horses harnessed to his carriage, drove out to the village, and asked Crab if he were Dr. Noel. Yes, he was, he said. Then he was to go with him and bring back the stolen money. "Oh, yes, but Greet, my wife, must go too." The Lord was willing, and let both of them have a seat in the carriage, and they all drove away together. When they came to the nobleman's castle, the table was spread, and Crab was told to sit down and eat. "Yes, but my wife, Greet too," said he, and he seated himself with her at the table. And when the first servant came with a dish of delicate fare, the peasant nudged his wife and said, "Greet, that was the first," meaning that was the servant who brought the first dish. The servant, however, thought he intended by that to say, "That is the first thief," and as he actually was so, he was terrified, and said to his comrade outside, "The doctor knows all. We shall fare ill." He said I was the first. The second did not want to go in at all, but was forced. So when he went in with his dish, the peasant nudged his wife and said, "Greet, that is the second." This servant was equally alarmed, and he got out as fast as he could. The third fared no better. For the peasant again said, "Greet, that is the third." The fourth had to carry in a dish that was covered, and the Lord told the doctor that he was to show his skill. And guess what was beneath the cover? Actually, there were crabs. The doctor looked at the dish, had no idea what to say, and cried, "Ah, poor crab." When the Lord heard that, he cried, "There, he knows it." He must also know who has the money. On this the servants looked terribly uneasy, and made a sign to the doctor that they wished him to step outside for a moment. When therefore he went out, all 4 of them confessed to him that they had stolen the money, and said that they would willingly restore it, and give him a heavy sum into the bargain, if he would not denounce them, for if he did they would be hanged. They led him to the spot where the money was concealed. With this the doctor was satisfied, and returned to the hall, sat down to the table, and said, "My lord, now will I search in my book where the gold is hidden." The 5th servant, however, crept into the stove to hear if the doctor knew still more. But the doctor sat still and opened his ABC book, turned the pages backwards and forwards, and looked for the cock. As he could not find it immediately, he said, "I know you are there, so you had better come out." Then the fellow in the stove thought that the doctor meant him, and full of terror, sprang out, crying, "That man knows everything." Then Dr. Noel showed the Lord where the money was, but did not say who had stolen it, and received from both sides much money in reward, and became a renowned man. The 7 Aravianesta was once a man who had 7 sons, and last of all 1 daughter. Although the little girl was very pretty, she was so weak and small that they thought she could not live. But they said she should at once be christened. That so, the father sent one of his sons in haste to the spring to get some water, but the other 6 ran with him. Each wanted to be first at drawing the water, and so they were in such a hurry that all let their pitchers fall into the well, and they stood very foolishly looking at one another, and did not know what to do, for none dared go home. In the meantime the father was uneasy, and could not tell what made the young men stay so long. "Surely," said he, "the whole 7 must have forgotten themselves over some game of play." And when he had waited still longer and they yet did not come, he flew into a rage and wished them all turned into ravens. Scarcely had he spoken these words when he heard a croaking over his head, and looked up and saw 7 ravens as black as coal flying round and round. Sorry as he was to see his wish so fulfilled, he did not know how what was done could be undone, and comforted himself as well as he could for the loss of his 7 sons, with his dear little daughter, who soon became stronger and every day more beautiful. For a long time she did not know that she had ever had any brothers, for her father and mother took care not to speak of them before her. But one day by chance she heard the people about her speak of them. "Yes," said they, "she is beautiful indeed, but still 'tis a pity that her brothers should have been lost for her sake." Then she was much grieved, and went to her father and mother, and asked if she had any brothers, and what had become of them. So they dared no longer hide the truth from her, but said it was the will of heaven, and that her birth was only the innocent cause of it. But the little girl mourned sadly about it every day, and thought herself bound to do all she could to bring her brothers back, and she had neither rest nor ease, till at length one day she stole away, and set out into the wide world to find her brothers, wherever they might be, and free them, whatever it might cost her. She took nothing with her but a little ring which her father and mother had given her, a loaf of bread in case she should be hungry, a little pitcher of water in case she should be thirsty, and a little stool to rest upon when she should be weary. Thus she went on, and journeyed till she came to the world's end. Then she came to the sun, but the sun looked much too hot and fiery, so she ran away quickly to the moon. But the moon was cold and chilly, and said, "I smell flesh and blood this way." So she took herself away in a hurry and came to the stars. And the stars were friendly and kind to her, and each star sat upon his own little stool. But the morning star rose up and gave her a little piece of wood, and said, "If you have not this little piece of wood, you cannot unlock the castle that stands on the glass mountain, and there your brothers live." The little girl took the piece of wood, rolled it up in a little cloth, and went on again until she came to the glass mountain, and found the door shut. Then she felt for the little piece of wood, but when she unwrapped the cloth it was not there, and she saw she had lost the gift of the good stars. What was to be done? She wanted to save her brothers, and had no key of the castle of the glass mountain. So this faithful little sister took a knife out of her pocket and cut off her little finger. That was just the size of the piece of wood she had lost, and put it in the door and opened it. As she went in, a little dwarf came up to her and said, "What are you seeking for?" "I seek for my brothers, the 7 ravens," answered she. Then the dwarf said, "My masters are not at home, but if you will wait till they come, pray step in." Now the little dwarf was getting their dinner ready, and he brought their food upon 7 little plates, and their drink in 7 little glasses, and set them upon the table. And out of each little plate, their sister ate a small piece, and out of each little glass she drank a small drop. But she let the ring that she had brought with her fall into the last glass. On a sudden she heard a fluttering and croaking in the air, and the dwarf said, "Here come my masters." When they came in, they wanted to eat and drink, and looked for their little plates and glasses. Then said one after the other, "Who has eaten from my little plate? And who has been drinking out of my little glass? Cool. See it? Well, I ween mortal lips have this way been." When the 7th came to the bottom of his glass, and found there the ring, he looked at it, and knew that it was his father's and mother's, and said, "Oh, that our little sister would but come, then we should be free." When the little girl heard this, for she stood behind the door all the time and listened, she ran forward, and in an instant all the ravens took their right form again, and all hugged and kissed each other, and went merrily home. The wedding of Mistress Foxfirst, or why there was once upon a time an old fox with 9 tails, who believed that his wife was not faithful to him, and wished to put her to the test. He stretched himself out under the bench, did not move a limb, and behaved as if he were stone dead. Mrs. Fox went up to her room, shut herself in, and her maid, Miss Cat, sat by the fire and did the cooking. When it became known that the old fox was dead, suitors presented themselves. The maid heard someone standing at the house door, knocking. She went and opened it, and it was a young fox who said, "What may you be about, Miss Cat? Do you sleep, or do you wake?" She answered, "I am not sleeping. I am waking. Would you know what I am making? I am boiling warm beer with butter. Will you be my guest for supper?" "No, thank you, miss," said the fox. "What is Mrs. Fox doing?" The maid replied, "She is sitting in her room, moaning in her gloom, weeping her little eyes quite red, because old Mr. Fox is dead. Do just tell her, miss, that a young fox is here who would like to woo her." "Certainly, young sir." The cat goes up the stairs. Trip, trap, the door she knocks at tap. Tap, tap. "Mistress Fox, are you inside?" "Oh, yes, my little cat," she cried. "A wooer. He stands at the door out there. What does he look like, my dear? Has he 9 as beautiful tails as the late Mr. Fox?" "Oh, no," answered the cat. "He has only 1. Then I will not have him." Miss Cat went downstairs and sent the wooer away. Soon afterwards there was another knock, and another fox was at the door who wished to woo Mrs. Fox. He had 2 tails, but he did not fare better than the first. After this, still more came, each with 1 tail more than the other, but they were all turned away, until at last one came who had 9 tails, like old Mr. Fox. When the widow heard that, she said joyfully to the cat, "Now open the gates and doors all wide, and carry old Mr. Fox outside." But just as the wedding was going to be, old Mr. Fox stirred under the bench and cudgeled all the rabble, and drove them and Mrs. Fox out of the house. Second SDRY when old Mr. Fox was dead, the wolf came as a suitor and knocked at the door, and the cat, who was servant to Mrs. Fox, opened it for him. The wolf greeted her and said, "Good day, Mrs. Cat of Carewit. How comes it that alone you sit? What are you making good?" The cat replied, "In milk I'm breaking bread so sweet. Will you be my guest and eat?" "No, thank you, Mrs. Cat," answered the wolf. "Is Mrs. Fox not at home?" The cat said, "She sits upstairs in her room, bewailing her sorrowful doom, bewailing her troubles so sore, for old Mr. Fox is no more." The wolf answered, "If she's in want of a husband now, then will it please her to step below?" The cat runs quickly up the stair, and lets her tail fly here and there, until she comes to the parlor door. With her 5 gold rings at the door she knocks. "Are you within, good Mistress Fox? If you're in want of a husband now, then will it please you to step below?" Mrs. Fox asked. "Has the gentleman red stockings on, and has he a pointed mouth?" "No," answered the cat. "Then he won't do for me." When the wolf was gone, came a dog, a stag, a hare, a bear. a lion, and all the beasts of the forest, one after the other. But one of the good qualities which old Mr. Fox had possessed was always lacking, and the cat had continually to send the suitors away. At length came a young fox. Then Mrs. Fox said, "Has the gentleman red stockings on, and has a little pointed mouth?" "Yes," said the cat, "he has." "Then let him come upstairs," said Mrs. Fox, and ordered the servant to prepare the wedding feast. "Sweep me the room as clean as you can. Up with the window, fling out my old man. For many a fine fat mouse he brought, yet of his wife he never thought, but ate up every one he caught." Then the wedding was solemnized with young Mr. Fox, and there was much rejoicing and dancing, and if they have not left off, they are dancing still. The story of the youth who went forth to learn what Firawasa, certain father, had 2 sons, the elder of who was smart and sensible, and could do everything, but the younger was stupid and could neither learn nor understand anything. And when people saw him, they said, "There's a fellow who will give his father some trouble." When anything had to be done, it was always the elder who was forced to do it. But if his father bade him fetch anything when it was late, or in the night time in the way, led through the church at, or any other dismal place, he answered, "Oh no, father, I'll not go there. It makes me shudder," for he was afraid. Or when stories were told by the fire at night which made the flesh creep, the listeners sometimes said, "Oh, it makes us shudder." The younger sat in a corner and listened with the rest of them, and could not imagine what they could mean. "They are always saying, 'It makes me shudder. It makes me shudder.' It does not make me shudder," thought he. "That, too, must be an art of which I understand nothing." Now it came to pass that his father said to him one day, "Hearken to me, you fellow in the corner there. You are growing tall and strong, and you too must learn something by which you can earn your bread. Look how your brother works, but you do not even earn your salt." "Well, father," he replied, "I am quite willing to learn something indeed. If it could but be managed, I should like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet." The elder brother smiled when he heard that, and thought to himself, "Goodness, what a blockhead that brother of mine is. He will never be good for anything as long as he lives. He who wants to be a sickle must bend himself betimes." The father sighed, and answered him, "You shall soon learn what it is to shudder, but you will not earn your bread by that." Soon after this, the sexton came to the house on a visit, and the father bewailed his trouble, and told him how his younger son was so backward in every respect that he knew nothing and learnt nothing. "Just think," said he, when I asked him how he was going to earn his bread, "he actually wanted to learn to shudder." "If that be all," replied the sexton, "he can learn that with me. Send him to me, and I will soon polish him." The father was glad to do it, for he thought, It will train the boy a little." The sexton therefore took him into his house, and he had to ring the church bell. After a day or two, the sexton awoke him at midnight and bade him arise and go up into the church tower and ring the bell. "You shall soon learn what shuddering is," thought he, and secretly went there before him. And when the boy was at the top of the tower and turned round and was just going to take hold of the bell rope, he saw a white figure standing on the stairs opposite the sounding hole. "Who is there?" cried he. But the figure made no reply and did not move or stir. "Give an answer," cried the boy, "or take yourself off. You have no business here at night." The sexton, however, remained standing motionless, that the boy might think he was a ghost. The boy cried a second time, "What do you want here? Speak if you are an honest fellow, or I will throw you down the steps." The sexton thought, "He can't mean to be as bad as his words," uttered no sound, and stood as if he were made of stone. Then the boy called to him for the third time, and as that was also to no purpose, he ran against him and pushed the ghost down the stairs, so that it fell down the 10 steps and remained lying there in a corner. Thereupon he rang the bell, went home, and without saying a word, went to bed and fell asleep. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband, but he did not come back. At length she became uneasy and wakened the boy and asked, "Do you know where my husband is?" "He climbed up the tower before you did." "No, I don't know," replied the boy, "but someone was standing by the sounding hole on the other side of the steps, and as he would neither give an answer nor go away, I took him for a scoundrel and threw him downstairs. Just go there and you will see if it was he. I should be sorry if it were." The woman ran away and found her husband, who was lying moaning in the corner and had broken his leg. She carried him down, and then with loud screams she hastened to the boy's father. "Your boy," cried she, "has been the cause of a great misfortune. He has thrown my husband down the steps so that he broke his leg. Take the good-for-nothing fellow out of our house." The father was terrified and ran thither and scolded the boy. "What wicked tricks are these?" said he. "The devil must have put them into your head." "Father," he replied, "do listen to me. I am quite innocent. He was standing there by night, like one intent on doing evil. I did not know who it was, and I entreated him 3 times, either to speak or to go away." "Ah," said the father, "I have nothing but unhappiness with you. Go out of my sight. I will see you no more." "Yes, father, right willingly. Wait only until it is day. Then will I go forth and learn how to shudder, and then I shall, at any rate, understand one art which will support me. Learn what you will," spoke the father. "It is all the same to me. Here are 50 tailors for you. Take these and go into the wide world, and tell no one from whence you come. And who is your father?" for I have reason to be ashamed of you. Yes, father, it shall be as you will. If you desire nothing more than that, I can easily keep it in mind. When the day dawned, therefore, the boy put his 50 thalers into his pocket and went forth on the great highway and continually said to himself, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." Then a man approached who heard this conversation which the youth was holding with himself, and when they had walked a little farther to where they could see the gallows, the man said to him, "Look, there is the tree where 7 men have married the rope-maker's daughter, and are now learning how to fly. Sit down beneath it, and wait till night comes, and you will soon learn how to shudder." "If that is all that is wanted," answered the youth, "it is easily done. But if I learn how to shudder as fast as that, you shall have my 50 thalers. Just come back to me early in the morning." Then the youth went to the gallows, sat down beneath it, and waited till evening came. And as he was cold, he lighted himself a fire. But at midnight the wind blew so sharply that, in spite of his fire, he could not get warm. And as the wind knocked the hanged men against each other, and they moved backwards and forwards, he thought to himself, "If you shiver below by the fire, how those up above must freeze and suffer." And as he felt pity for them, he raised the ladder and climbed up, unbound one of them after the other, and brought down all 7. Then he stoked the fire, blew it, and set them all round it to warm themselves. But they sat there and did not stir, and the fire caught their clothes. So he said, "Take care, or I will hang you up again." The dead men, however, did not hear, but were quite silent, and let their rags go on burning. At this he grew angry, and said, "If you will not take care, I cannot help you. I will not be burnt with you." And he hung them up again, each in his turn. Then he sat down by his fire and fell asleep. And the next morning the man came to him and wanted to have the 50 thalers, and said, "Well, do you know how to shudder?" "No," answered he. "How should I know? Those fellows up there did not open their mouths, and were so stupid that they let the few old rags which they had on their bodies get burnt." Then the man saw that he would not get the 50 thalers that day, and went away saying, "Such a youth has never come my way before." The youth likewise went his way, and once more began to mutter to himself, "Ah, if I could but shudder! Ah, if I could but shudder!" A wagoner who was striding behind him heard this and asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," answered the youth. Then the wagoner asked, "From whence do you come?" "I know not." "Who is your father, that I may not tell you?" "What is it that you are always muttering between your teeth?" "Ah," replied the youth, "I do so wish I could shudder, but no one can teach me how." "Enough of your foolish chatter," said the wagoner. "Come, go with me. I will see about a place for you." The youth went with the wagoner, and in the evening they arrived at an inn where they wished to pass the night. Then at the entrance of the parlor, the youth again said quite loudly, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." The host who heard this laughed and said, "If that is your desire, there ought to be a good opportunity for you here. Be silent," said the hostess. "So many prying persons have already lost their lives. It would be a pity and a shame if such beautiful eyes as these should never see the daylight again." But the youth said, "However difficult it may be, I will learn it. For this purpose indeed have I journeyed forth." He let the host have no rest until the latter told him that not far from thence stood a haunted castle where anyone could very easily learn what shuddering was, if he would but watch in it for 3 nights. The king had promised that he who would venture should have his daughter to wife, and she was the most beautiful maiden the sun shone on. Likewise in the castle lay great treasures, which were guarded by evil spirits, and these treasures would then be freed, and would make a poor man rich enough. Already many men had gone into the castle, but as yet none had come out again. Then the youth went next morning to the king, and said, "If it be allowed, I will willingly watch 3 nights in the haunted castle." The king looked at him, and as the youth pleased him, he said, "You may ask for 3 things to take into the castle with you, but they must be things without life." Then he answered, "Then I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with the knife." The king had these things carried into the castle for him during the day. When night was drawing near, the youth went up and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, placed the cutting board and knife beside it, and seated himself by the turning lathe. If I could but shudder," said he, "but I shall not learn it here either." Towards midnight he was about to poke his fire, and as he was blowing it, something cried suddenly from one corner, "Oh my! How cold we are!" "You fools," cried he, "what are you crying about? If you are cold, come and take a seat by the fire and warm yourselves." And when he had said that, 2 great black cats came with one tremendous leap and sat down on each side of him, and looked savagely at him with their fiery eyes. After a short time, when they had warmed themselves, they said, "Comrade, shall we have a game of cards?" "Why not?" he replied. "But just show me your paws." Then they stretched out their claws. "Oh," said he, "what long nails you have! Wait, I must first cut them for you." Thereupon he seized them by the throats, put them on the cutting board, and screwed their feet fast. "I have looked at your fingers," said he, "and my fanciful card-playing has gone." And he struck them dead and threw them out into the water. But when he had made away with these 2, and was about to sit down again by his fire, out from every hole and corner came black cats and black dogs with red-hot chains, and more of them came until he could no longer move, and they yelled horribly, and got on his fire, pulled it to pieces, and tried to put it out. He watched them for a while quietly, but at last, when they were going too far, he seized his cutting knife and cried, "Away with you, vermin," and began to cut them down. Some of them ran away. The others he killed and threw out into the fish pond. When he came back, he fanned the embers of his fire again and warmed himself. And as he thus sat, his eyes would keep open no longer, and he felt a desire to sleep. Then he looked round and saw a great bed in the corner. "That is the very thing for me," said he, and got into it when he was just going to shut his eyes. However, the bed began to move of its own accord and went over the whole of the castle. "That's right," said he, "but go faster." Then the bed rolled on as if 6 horses were harnessed to it, up and down, over thresholds and stairs. But suddenly, hop, hop, it turned over upside down and lay on him like a mountain. But he threw quilts and pillows up in the air, got out and said, "Now anyone who likes may drive," and lay down by his fire and slept till it was day. In the morning the king came, and when he saw him lying there on the ground, he thought the evil spirits had killed him and he was dead. Then said he, "After all, it is a pity for so handsome a man." The youth heard it, got up, and said, "It has not come to that yet." Then the king was astonished, but very glad, and asked how he had fared. "Very well indeed," answered he. "One night is past, the 2 others will pass likewise." Then he went to the innkeeper, who opened his eyes very wide, and said, "I never expected to see you alive again. Have you learned how to shudder yet?" "No," said he, "it is all in vain. If someone would but tell me." The second night he again went up into the old castle, sat down by the fire, and once more began his old song, "If I could but shudder." When midnight came, an uproar and noise of tumbling about was heard. At first it was low, but it grew louder and louder. Then it was quiet for a while, and at length with a loud scream, half a man came down the chimney and fell before him. "Hullo!" cried he, "another half belongs to this. This is not enough." Then the uproar began again. There was a roaring and howling, and the other half fell down likewise. "Wait," said he, "I will just stoke up the fire a little for you." When he had done that and looked round again, the 2 pieces were joined together, and a hideous man was sitting in his place. "That is no part of our bargain," said the youth. "The bench is mine." The man wanted to push him away. The youth, however, would not allow that, but thrust him off with all his strength and seated himself again in his own place. Then still more men fell down, one after the other. They brought 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls, and set them up and played at 9 pins with them. The youth also wanted to play and said, "Listen, you, can I join you?" "Yes, if you have any money." "Money enough," replied he, "but your balls are not quite round." Then he took the skulls and put them in the lathe and turned them till they were round. There, now they will roll better, said he. Hurrah, now we'll have fun. He played with them and lost some of his money, but when it struck 12, everything vanished from his sight. He lay down and quietly fell asleep. Next morning, the king came to inquire after him. "How has it fared with you this time?" asked he. "I have been playing at 9 pins, he answered, "and have lost a couple of farthings. Have you not shuddered then?" "Why," said he, "I have had a wonderful time. If I did but know what it was to shudder." The third night he sat down again on his bench and said quite sadly, "If I could but shudder." When it grew late, 6 tall men came in and brought coffin. Then he said, "Ha ha! That is certainly my little cousin, who died only a few days ago." And he beckoned with his finger and cried, "Come, little cousin, come." They placed the coffin on the ground, but he went to it and took the lid off, and a dead man lay therein. He felt his face, but it was cold as ice. "Wait," said he, "I will warm you a little," and went to the fire and warmed his hand and laid it on the dead man's face. But he remained cold. Then he took him out and sat down by the fire and laid him on his breast and rubbed his arms that the blood might circulate again. As this also did no good, he thought to himself, "When 2 people lie in bed together, they warm each other," and carried him to the bed, covered him over and lay down by him. After a short time the dead man became warm too, and began to move. Then said the youth, "See, little cousin, have I not warmed you?" The dead man, however, got up and cried, "Now will I strangle you, what?" said he. "Is that the way you thank me? You shall at once go into your coffin again." And he took him up, threw him into it, and shut the lid. Then came the 6 men and carried him away again. "I cannot manage to shudder," said he. "I shall never learn it here as long as I live." Then a man entered who was taller than all others, and looked terrible. He was old, however, and had a long white beard. "You wretch," cried he, "you shall soon learn what it is to shudder, for you shall die." "Not so fast," replied the youth. "If I am to die, I shall have to have a say in it." "I will soon seize you," said the fiend. "Softly, softly. Do not talk so big. I am as strong as you are, and perhaps even stronger." "We shall see," said the old man. "If you are stronger, I will let you go. We will try." Then he led him by dark passages to a smith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow struck an anvil into the ground. "I can do better than that," said the youth, and went to the other anvil. The old man placed himself near and wanted to look on, and his white beard hung down. Then the youth seized the axe, split the anvil with one blow, and in it caught the old man's beard. "Now I have you," said the youth. "Now it is your turn to die." Then he seized an iron bar and beat the old man till he moaned and entreated him to stop, when he would give him great riches. The youth drew out the axe and let him go. The old man led him back into the castle, and in a cellar showed him 3 chests full of gold. "Of these," said he, "one part is for the poor, the other for the king, the third yours." In the meantime it struck 12, and the spirit disappeared, so that the youth stood in darkness. "I shall still be able to find my way out," said he, and felt about, found the way into the room, and slept there by his fire. Next morning the king came and said, "Now you must have learnt what shuddering is." "No," he answered. "What can it be?" My dead cousin was here, and a bearded man came and showed me a great deal of money down below, but no one told me what it was to shudder. "Then," said the king, "you have saved the castle, and shall marry my daughter." "That is all very well," said he, "but still I do not know what it is to shudder." Then the gold was brought up and the wedding celebrated. But howsoever much the young king loved his wife, and however happy he was, he still said always, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." And this at last angered her. Her waiting maid said, "I will find a cure for him. He shall soon learn what it is to shudder." She went out to the stream which flowed through the garden, and had a whole bucket full of gudgeons brought to her. At night, when the young king was sleeping, his wife was to draw the clothes off him and empty the bucket full of cold water with the gudgeons in it over him, so that the little fishes would sprawl about him. Then he woke up and cried, "Oh, what makes me shudder so? What makes me shudder so, dear wife? Ah! Now I know what it is to shudder. King Grizzlebeard, great king of a land far away in the east, had a daughter who was very beautiful, but so proud and haughty and conceited that none of the princes who came to ask her in marriage was good enough for her, and she only made sport of them. Once upon a time the king held a great feast, and asked thither all her suitors, and they all sat in a row, ranged according to their rankings, and princes, and dukes, and earls, and counts, and barons, and knights. Then the princess came in, and as she passed by them, she had something spiteful to say to everyone. The first was too fat. "He's as round as a tub," said she. The next was too tall. "What a maypole," said she. The next was too short. "What a dumpling," said she. The fourth was too pale, and she called him Wallface. The fifth was too red, so she called him Coxcomb. The sixth was not straight enough, so she said he was like a green stick that had been laid to dry over a baker's oven, and thus she had some joke to crack upon every one. But she laughed more than all at a good king who was there. "Look at him," said she. His beard is like an old mop. He shall be called Grizzly. So the king got the nickname of Grizzly Beard. But the old king was very angry when he saw how his daughter behaved, and how she ill-treated all his guests. And he vowed that, willing or unwilling, she should marry the first man, be he prince or beggar, that came to the door. 2 days after, there came by a traveling fiddler who began to play under the window and beg alms. And when the king heard him, he said, "Let him come in." So they brought in a dirty-looking fellow, and when he had sung before the king and the princess, he begged a boon. Then the king said, "You have sung so well that I will give you my daughter for your wife." The princess begged and prayed, but the king said, "I have sworn to give you to the first comer, and I will keep my word." So words and tears were of no avail. The parson was sent for, and she was married to the fiddler. When this was over, the king said, "Now get ready to go. Ye must not stay here. Ye must travel on with your husband." Then the fiddler went his way and took her with him, and they soon came to a great wood. "Pray," said she, "whose is this wood?" "It belongs to King Grizzly Beard," answered he. "Hadst thou taken him, all had been thine." "Ah, unlucky wretch that I am," sighed she. "Would that I had married King Grizzly." Next they came to some fine meadows. "Whose are these beautiful green meadows?" said she. "They belong to King Grisabed. Hadst thou taken him, they had all been thine." "Ah, unlucky wretch that I am," said she. "Would that I had married King Grisabed." Then they came to a great city. "Whose is this noble city?" said she. "It belongs to King Grizzly. Hadst thou taken him, it had all been thine." "Ah, wretch that I am," sighed she. "Why did I not marry King Grizzly?" "That is no business of mine," said the fiddler. "Why should you wish for another husband? Am not I good enough for you?" At last they came to a small cottage. "What a paltry place," said she. "To whom does that little dirty hole belong?" Then the fiddler said, "That is your and my house, where we are to live." "Where are your servants?" cried she. "What do we want with servants?" said he. "You must do for yourself whatever is to be done. Now make the fire, and put on water and cook my supper, for I am very tired." But the princess knew nothing of making fires and cooking, and the fiddler was forced to help her. When they had eaten a very scanty meal, they went to bed. But that fiddler called her up very early in the morning to clean the house. Thus they lived for 2 days. And when they had eaten up all there was in the cottage, the man said, "Wife, we can't go on thus, spending money and earning nothing. You must learn to weave baskets." Then he went out and cut willows and brought them home, and she began to weave. But it made her fingers very sore. "I see this work won't do," said he. "Try and spin. Perhaps you will do that better." So she sat down and tried to spin, but the threads cut her tender fingers till the blood ran. "See now," said the fiddler, "you are good for nothing. You can do no work. What a bargain I have got. However, I'll try and set up a trade in pots and pans, and you shall stand in the market and sell them." "Alas," sighed she, "if any of my father's court should pass by and see me standing in the market, how they will laugh at me." But her husband did not care for that, and said she must work if she did not wish to die of hunger. At first, the trade went well, for many people, seeing such a beautiful woman, went to buy her wares and paid their money without thinking of taking away the goods. They lived on this as long as it lasted, and then the husband bought a fresh lot of ware, and she sat herself down with it in the corner of the market. But a drunken soldier soon came by, and rode his horse against her stall, and broke all her goods into 1,000 pieces. Then she began to cry, and knew not what to do. "Ah, what will become of me?" said she. "What will my husband say?" So she ran home and told him all. "Who would have thought you would have been so silly," said he, "as to put an earthenware stall in the corner of the market, where everybody passes? But let us have no more crying. I see you are not fit for this sort of work, so I have been to the king's palace and asked if they did not want a kitchen maid, and they say they will take you, and there you will have plenty to eat." Thus the princess became a kitchen maid, and helped the cook to do all the dirtiest work. But she was allowed to carry home some of the meat that was left, and on this they lived. She had not been there long before she heard that the king's eldest son was passing by, going to be married, and she went to one of the windows and looked out. Everything was ready, and all the pomp and brightness of the court was there. Then she bitterly grieved for the pride and folly which had brought her so low, and the servants gave her some of the rich meats, which she put into her basket to take home. All on a sudden, as she was going out, in came the king's son in golden clothes, and when he saw a beautiful woman at the door, he took her by the hand and said she should be his partner in the dance. But she trembled for fear, for she saw that it was King Grizzlybeard who was making sport of her. However, he kept fast hold and let her in, and the cover of the basket came off, so that the meats in it fell about. Then everybody laughed and jeered at her, and she was so abashed that she wished herself 1,000 feet deep in the earth. She sprang to the door to run away, but on the steps King Grizzlybeard overtook her and brought her back and said, "Fear me not. I am the fiddler who has lived with you in the hut. I brought you there because I really loved you. I am also the soldier that overset your stall. I have done all this only to cure you of your silly pride, and to show you the folly of your ill treatment of me. Now all is over. You have learned wisdom, and it is time to hold our marriage feast." Then the chamberlains came and brought her the most beautiful robes, and her father and his whole court were there already, and welcomed her home on her marriage. Joy was in every face and every heart. The feast was grand. They danced and sang. All were merry, and I only wish that you and I had been of the party. Ironation, as there was once upon a time a king who had a great forest near his palace, full of all kinds of wild animals. One day he sent out a huntsman to shoot him a roe, but he did not come back. Perhaps some accident has befallen him, said the king, and the next day he sent out 2 more huntsmen who were to search for him. But they too stayed away. Then, on the 3rd day, he sent for all his huntsmen and said, "Scour the whole forest through, and do not give up until you have found all 3. But of these also, none came home again. None were seen again. From that time forth, no one would any longer venture into the forest, and it lay there in deep stillness and solitude, and nothing was seen of it but sometimes an eagle or a hawk flying over it." This lasted for many years, when an unknown huntsman announced himself to the king as seeking a situation and offered to go into the dangerous forest. The king, however, would not give his consent and said, "It is not safe in there. I fear it would fare with you no better than with the others, and you would never come out again." The huntsman replied, "Lord, I will venture it at my own risk. Of fear I know nothing." The huntsman therefore betook himself with his dog to the forest. It was not long before the dog fell in with some game on the way, and wanted to pursue it, but hardly had the dog run 2 steps when it stood before a deep pool, could go no farther, and a naked arm stretched itself out of the water, seized it, and drew it under. When the huntsman saw that, he went back and fetched 3 men to come with buckets and bail out the water. When they could see to the bottom, there lay a wild man whose body was brown like rusty iron, and whose hair hung over his face down to his knees. They bound him with cords and led him away to the castle. There was great astonishment over the wild man. The king, however, had him put in an iron cage in his courtyard, and forbade the door to be opened on pain of death, and the queen herself was to take the key into her keeping. And from this time forth everyone could again go into the forest with safety. The king had a son of 8 years who was once playing in the courtyard, and while he was playing, his golden ball fell into the cage. The boy ran thither and said, "Give me my ball out." "Not till you have opened the door for me," answered the man. "No," said the boy, "I will not do that. The king has forbidden it," and ran away. The next day he again went and asked for his ball. The wild man said, "Open my door," but the boy would not. On the 3rd day the king had ridden out hunting, and the boy went once more and said, "I cannot open the door even if I wished, for I have not the key." Then the wild man said, "It lies under your mother's pillow. You can get it there." The boy, who wanted to have his ball back, cast all thought to the winds and brought the key. The door opened with difficulty, and the boy pinched his fingers. When it was open, the wild man stepped out, gave him the golden ball, and hurried away. The boy had become afraid. He called and cried after him, "Oh, wild man, do not go away, or I shall be beaten." The wild man turned back, took him up, set him on his shoulder, and went with hasty steps into the forest. When the king came home, he observed the empty cage and asked the queen how that had happened. She knew nothing about it and sought the key, but it was gone. She called the boy, but no one answered. The king sent out people to seek for him in the fields, but they did not find him. Then he could easily guess what had happened, and much grief reigned in the royal court. When the wild man had once more reached the dark forest, he took the boy down from his shoulder and said to him, "You will never see your father and mother again, but I will keep you with me, for you have set me free, and I have compassion on you. If you do all I bid you, you shall fare well. Of treasure and gold have I enough, and more than anyone in the world." He made a bed of moss for the boy on which he slept, and the next morning the man took him to a well and said, "Behold, the gold well is as bright and clear as crystal. You shall sit beside it and take care that nothing falls into it, or it will be polluted. I will come every evening to see if you have obeyed my order." The boy placed himself by the brink of the well, and often saw a golden fish or a golden snake show itself therein, and took care that nothing fell in. As he was thus sitting, his finger hurt him so violently that he involuntarily put it in the water. He drew it quickly out again, but saw that it was quite gilded, and whatsoever pains he took to wash the gold off again, all was to no purpose. In the evening, Iron Hans came back, looked at the boy, and said, "What has happened to the well?" "Nothing, nothing," he answered, and held his finger behind his back, that the man might not see it. But he said, "You have dipped your finger into the water. This time it may pass, but take care you do not again let anything go in." By daybreak, the boy was already sitting by the well and watching it. His finger hurt him again, and he passed it over his head, and then unhappily a hair fell down into the well. He took it quickly out, but it was already quite gilded. Iron Hans came, and already knew what had happened. "You have let a hair fall into the well," said he. "I will allow you to watch by it once more. But if this happens for the third time, then the well is polluted, and you can no longer remain with me." On the third day, the boy sat by the well and did not stir his finger, however much it hurt him. But the time was long to him, and he looked at the reflection of his face on the surface of the water. And as he still bent down more and more while he was doing so, and trying to look straight into the eyes, his long hair fell down from his shoulders into the water. He raised himself up quickly, but the whole of the hair of his head was already golden and shone like the sun. You can imagine how terrified the poor boy was. He took his pocket handkerchief and tied it round his head, in order that the man might not see it. When he came He already knew everything and said, "Take the handkerchief off." Then the golden hair streamed forth, and let the boy excuse himself as he might, it was of no use. You have not stood the trial and can stay here no longer. Go forth into the world. There you will learn what poverty is. But as you have not a bad heart, and as I mean well by you, there is one thing I will grant you. If you fall into any difficulty, come to the forest and cry, "Iron Hans," and then I will come and help you. My power is great, greater than you think, and I have gold and silver in abundance. Then the king's son left the forest and walked by beaten and unbeaten paths ever onwards until at length he reached a great city. There he looked for work, but could find none, and he learnt nothing by which he could help himself. At length he went to the palace and asked if they would take him in. The people about court did not at all know what use they could make of him, but they liked him and told him to stay. At length the cook took him into his service and said he might carry wood and water and rake the cinders together. Once, when it so happened that no one else was at hand, the cook ordered him to carry the food to the royal table. But as he did not like to let his golden hair be seen, he kept his little cap on. Such a thing as that had never yet come under the king's notice, and he said, "When you come to the royal table, you must take your hat off." He answered, "Ah, Lord, I cannot. I have a bad sore place on my head." Then the king had the cook called before him and scolded him, and asked how he could take such a boy as that into his service, and that he was to send him away at once. The cook, however, had pity on him, and exchanged him for the gardener's boy. And now the boy had to plant and water the garden, hoe and dig, and bear the wind and bad weather. Once in summer, when he was working alone in the garden, the day was so warm he took his little cap off, that the air might cool him. As the sun shone on his hair, it glittered and flashed so that the rays fell into the bedroom of the king's daughter, and up she sprang to see what that could be. Then she saw the boy and cried to him, "Boy, bring me a wreath of flowers." He put his cap on with all haste, and gathered wild field flowers and bound them together. When he was ascending the stairs with them, the gardener met him and said, "How can you take the king's daughter a garland of such common flowers? Go quickly and get another, and seek out the prettiest and rarest." "No," replied the boy, "the wild ones have more scent, and will please her better." When he got into the room, the king's daughter said, "Take your cap off. It is not seemly to keep it on in my presence." He again said, "I may not. I have a sore head." She, however, caught at his cap and pulled it off, and then his golden hair rolled down on his shoulders, and it was splendid to behold. He wanted to run out, but she held him by the arm and gave him a handful of ducats. With these he departed, but he cared nothing for the gold pieces. He took them to the gardener and said, I present them to your children. They can play with them." The following day, the king's daughter again called to him that he was to bring her a wreath of field flowers, and then he went in with it. She instantly snatched at his cap and wanted to take it away from him, but he held it fast with both hands. She again gave him a handful of ducats, but he would not keep them, and gave them to the gardener for playthings for his children. On the third day, things went just the same. She could not get his cap away from him, and he would not have her money. Not long afterwards, the country was overrun by war. The king gathered together his people and did not know whether or not he could offer any opposition to the enemy, who was superior in strength and had a mighty army. Then said the gardener's boy, "I am grown up, and will go to the wars also. Only give me a horse." The others laughed and said, "Seek one for yourself when we are gone. We will leave one behind us in the stable for you." When they had gone forth, he went into the stable and led the horse out. It was lame of one foot and limped, hobble-tee-jib, hobble-tee-jib. Nevertheless, he mounted it and rode away to the dark forest. When he came to the outskirts, he called Iron Hans 3 times so loudly that it echoed through the trees. Thereupon the wild man appeared immediately and said, "What do you desire?" "I want a strong steed, for I am going to the wars. That you shall have, and still more than you ask for." Then the wild man went back into the forest, and it was not long before a stable boy came out of it, who led a horse that snorted with its nostrils, and could hardly be restrained. And behind them followed a great troop of warriors entirely equipped in iron, and their swords flashed in the sun. The youth made over his 3-legged horse to the stable boy, mounted the other, and rode at the head of the soldiers. When he got near the battlefield, a great part of the king's men had already fallen, and little was wanting to make the rest give way. Then the youth galloped thither with his iron soldiers, broke like a hurricane over the enemy, and beat down all who opposed him. They began to flee, but the youth pursued and never stopped until there was not a single man left. Instead of returning to the king, however, he conducted his troop by byways back to the forest and called forth Iron Hans. "What do you desire?" asked the wild man. "Take back your horse and your troops, and give me my 3-legged horse again." All that he asked was done, and soon he was riding on his 3-legged horse. When the king returned to his palace, his daughter went to meet him and wished him joy of his victory. "I am not the one who carried away the victory," said he, "but a strange knight who came to my assistance with his soldiers." The daughter wanted to hear who the strange knight was, but the king did not know and said, "He followed the enemy, and I did not see him again." She inquired of the gardener where his boy was, but he smiled and said, "He has just come home on his 3-legged horse, and the others have been mocking him and crying, 'Here comes our hobble-tee-jib back again.'" They asked, too, "Under what?" "What hedge have you been lying, sleeping all the time?" So he said, I did the best of all, and it would have gone badly without me. And then he was still more ridiculed. The king said to his daughter, I will proclaim a great feast that shall last for 3 days, and you shall throw a golden apple. Perhaps the unknown man will show himself. When the feast was announced, the youth went out to the forest and called Iron Hans. What do you desire? Asked he. That I may catch the king's daughter's golden apple. It is as safe as if you had it already, said Iron Hans. You shall likewise have a suit of red armor for the occasion, and ride on a spirited chestnut horse. When the day came, the youth galloped to the spot, took his place amongst the knights, and was recognized by no one. The king's daughter came forward and threw a golden apple to the knights, but none of them caught it but he. Only as soon as he had it, he galloped away. On the second day, Iron Hans equipped him as a white knight and gave him a white horse. Again, he was the only one who caught the apple, and he did not linger an instant, but galloped off with it. The king grew angry and said, That is not allowed. He must appear before me and tell his name. He gave the order that if the knight who caught the apple should go away again, they should pursue him, and if he would not come back willingly, they were to cut him down and stab him. On the third day, he received from Iron Hans a suit of black armor and a black horse, and again he caught the apple. But when he was riding off with it, the king's attendants pursued him, and one of them got so near him that he wounded the youth's leg with the point of his sword. The youth nevertheless escaped from them, but his horse leapt so violently that the helmet fell from the youth's head, and they could see that he had golden hair. They rode back and announced this to the king. The following day the king's daughter asked the gardener about his boy. He is at work in the garden. The queer creature has been at the festival too, and only came home yesterday evening. He has likewise shown my children 3 golden apples which he has won. The king had him summoned into his presence, and he came and again had his little cap on his head. But the king's daughter went up to him and took it off, and then his golden hair fell down over his shoulders, and he was so handsome that all were amazed. Are you the knight who came every day to the festival, always in different colors, and who caught the 3 golden apples? Asked the king. Yes, answered he, and here the apples are, and he took them out of his pocket and returned them to the king. If you desire further proof, you may see the wound which your people gave me when they followed me. But I am likewise the knight who helped you to your victory over your enemies. If you can perform such deeds as that, you are no gardener's boy. Tell me, who is your father? My father is a mighty king, and gold have I in plenty, as great as I require. I will see, said the king, that I owe my thanks to you. Can I do anything to please you? Yes, answered he, that indeed you can. Give me your daughter to wife, The maiden laughed and said, "He does not stand much on ceremony, but I have already seen by his golden hair that he was no gardener's boy." And then she went and kissed him. His father and mother came to the wedding and were in great delight, for they had given up all hope of ever seeing their dear son again. And as they were sitting at the marriage feast, the music suddenly stopped, the doors opened, and a stately king came in with a great retinue. He went up to the youth, embraced him, and said, "I am Iron Hans, and was by enchantment a wild man, but you have set me free. All the treasures which I possess shall be your property." After a time there was another feast, and Catskin asked the cook to let her go up and see it as before. "Yes," said he, "but come again in half an hour, and cook the king the soup that he likes so much." Then she ran to her little cabin, washed herself quickly, and took her dress out, which was silvery as the moon, and put it on. And when she went in, looking like a king's daughter, the king went up to her and rejoiced at seeing her again. And when the dance began, he danced with her. After the dance was at an end, she managed to slip out so slyly that the king did not see where she was gone. But she sprang into her little cabin and made herself into Catskin again, and went into the kitchen to cook the soup. Whilst the cook was above stairs, she got the golden necklace and dropped it into the soup. Then it was brought to the king, who ate it, and it pleased him as well as before. So he sent for the cook, who was again forced to tell him that Catskin had cooked it. Catskin was brought again before the king, but she still told him that she was only fit to have boots and shoes thrown at her head. But when the king had ordered a feast to be got ready for the third time, it happened just the same as before. "You must be a witch, Catskin," said the cook, "for you always put something into your soup so that it pleases the king better than mine." However, he let her go up as before. Then she put on her dress, which sparkled like the stars, and went into the ballroom in it. And the king danced with her again, and thought she had never looked so beautiful as she did then. So whilst he was dancing with her, he put a gold ring on her finger without her seeing it, and ordered that the dance should be kept up a long time. When it was at an end, he would have held her fast by the hand, but she slipped away and sprang so quickly through the crowd that he lost sight of her, and she ran as fast as she could into her little cabin under the stairs. But this time she kept away too long, and stayed beyond the half, so she had not time to take off her fine dress, and threw her fur mantle over it, and in her haste did not blacken herself all over with soot, but left one of her fingers white. Then she ran into the kitchen and cooked the king's soup, and as soon as the cook was gone, she put the golden brooch into the dish. When the king got to the bottom, he ordered Catskin to be called once more, and soon saw the white finger and the ring that he had put on it whilst they were dancing. So he seized her hand and kept fast hold of it, and when she wanted to loose herself and spring away, the fur cloak fell off a little on one side, and the starry dress sparkled underneath it. Then he got hold of the fur and tore it off, and her golden hair and beautiful form were seen, and she could no longer hide herself. So she washed the soot and ashes from her face, and showed herself to be the most beautiful princess upon the face of the earth. But the king said, "You are my beloved bride, and we will never more be parted from each other." And the wedding feast was held, and a merry day it was, as ever was heard of, or seen in that country, or indeed in any other.